At Thanksgiving, my mom stood up, looked at everyone, and called me a maid. Everyone laughed. What they didn't know, 3 weeks later, I'd be on a stage they could never reach.
My name is Jasmine Fitzgerald. I'm 31 years old, and the moment everything shifted began at a Thanksgiving dinner. There were 14 people gathered, family, neighbors, a few friends from church. Glasses clinked, laughter filled the room, and my mother stood to give her usual speech. She raised her wine glass proudly and said, "One of my daughters is a doctor, and the other—" She paused just long enough. "Well, she cleans houses." The room erupted in laughter. I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. I simply kept moving, refilling drinks, clearing plates, because that's what everyone expected of me. What they didn't know? Just 3 weeks later, those same people would sit in a grand ballroom with hundreds of guests, watching me walk across a stage to accept an award they couldn't even pronounce. And the business I built, the one none of them knew about, had already been serving places they admired. But to understand how that moment happened, you have to understand my family. We lived in a picture-perfect neighborhood in Phoenix. Green lawns, 2-car garages, backyard barbecues, the kind of place where everything looks perfect from the outside. My mother believed deeply in appearances, status, and success. My father avoided conflict at all costs. And my older sister, Vivian, she was everything my parents admired. A successful doctor, married to a high-powered attorney, 2 kids, a beautiful home, the perfect life. My mother adored her, celebrated her constantly. Her social media was filled with posts about Vivian, her achievements, her family, her milestones. If you didn't know better, you'd think she only had one daughter. Me? I was background noise. Growing up, I was always Vivian's little sister, never just Jasmine. I wasn't a failure, I was decent. Good grades, average achievements, but in a family obsessed with excellence, average might as well have been invisible. Every milestone of mine was brushed aside. When I earned a certification, it was acknowledged with a casual, "That's nice." When Vivian succeeded, it was a full celebration. The message was never spoken outright, but it was always clear. There was Vivian, and then there was me. But what happened when I stepped into her world and trusted her for the first time would change everything in ways I never saw coming.
When I was 22, I finally saw what I thought was my chance. Vivian offered me a job at her clinic. She framed it as a favor, something she was doing to help me out. I didn't question it. I was eager, hopeful, and desperate to prove I was more than the family disappointment. So I said yes. From day one, I gave everything. I showed up early, stayed late, and handled anything asked of me. I memorized patient details, calmed nervous clients, reorganized systems no one else wanted to touch. I never complained, not once. And most importantly, I never told anyone I was related to Vivian. I wanted to earn respect on my own. For 5 years, I believed I was doing exactly that. Then, one morning, everything collapsed. I was called into the manager's office. No warning, no build-up, just a folder on the desk and a serious expression. "We've received concerns about your performance," she said. "We're letting you go. Effective immediately." I was stunned. Concerns? From who? About what? No answers. Just 20 minutes to pack up 5 years of my life. As I walked out, I passed Vivian's office. The door was open. She was laughing on the phone, completely unbothered. She didn't look up. Not even once. 2 weeks later, I found out the truth. A coworker called me quietly and told me everything. Vivian had gone behind my back. She told management I was a liability, that I had attitude problems, that I made clients uncomfortable. None of it was true. But it didn't matter. Her word carried weight. Mine didn't. In one move, she erased everything I had built. I sat in my car that day for hours, trying to understand how my own sister could do something like that. I had no job, no references, and no explanation I could give my parents that wouldn't turn into another comparison. So I didn't tell them. Instead, I quietly started over. I thought losing everything was the lowest point of my life. But what I chose to do next would become the foundation of something no one else wanted to come.
With bills piling up and no job prospects, I took the only work I could find, cleaning houses. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what I imagined for myself, but it paid, and I needed stability. At first, it was just work, scrubbing floors, organizing clutter, keeping my head down. But over time, I began noticing something deeper. My clients didn't just need clean homes. They needed order in their lives. One client had unpaid bills scattered everywhere. Another had broken systems they didn't know how to fix. Without being asked, I started solving those problems.
organizing paperwork, scheduling repairs, simplifying routines. The reactions were immediate. Gratitude, relief, trust. That's when I realized something powerful. People with money don't just want service. They want ease. They want someone who understands their needs without making them feel dependent. And I could do that. So I took a risk. I started my own company. The beginning was brutal. Long hours, minimal income, constant doubt. I hired a small team and took any job we could get. Organization, errands, property management, anything that made people's lives easier. Slowly, things started to shift. More clients, better opportunities. Then one day, everything changed. A high-end resort owner reached out. She needed someone discreet, reliable, and detail-oriented. I got the contract. Then another. Then another. Within a few years, my company had grown beyond anything I imagined. Dozens of employees, major contracts, and nearly $2 million in annual revenue. But here's the part no one knew. I never told my family. To them, I was still just cleaning houses, and they never bothered to ask more. I built an entire empire in silence, but the truth was about to surface, and when it did, it wouldn't happen quietly.
Thanksgiving came again. Same house, same people, same roles. I parked at the end of the driveway, like always, walked into the house, like always, and within minutes, I was back in the kitchen, helping, serving, disappearing. No one asked me to sit. No one asked about my life. At one point, my nephew asked why I was always in the kitchen. Before I could answer, Vivian laughed and said, "Because that's where she belongs." Everyone smiled, and I stayed quiet. Until dinner. My mother stood up for her speech again. She praised my father, celebrated Vivian, admired her achievements, and then she turned to me. Same tone, same setup. One daughter is a doctor, and the other cleans houses. Laughter filled the room. But this time, something shifted. I stood up. The room went silent. I thanked her for making it clear where I stood in the family. And then I walked out. No scene, no shouting. Just clarity. Later that night, I received something unexpected, an email chain that revealed the truth. They hadn't just disrespected me. They had planned it. For months, conversations about excluding me, hiding me, being embarrassed by me. Even that toast, it was premeditated. I didn't cry. I didn't react. I simply understood. And that understanding changed everything. Rehook, because the very next morning, I received an email that would give me the perfect opportunity. Not for revenge, but for something far more powerful. Part 5. The moment they couldn't ignore. The email was simple. I had been selected for a major entrepreneurial award. A formal event, hundreds of guests, media coverage, and 10 invitation seats. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I invited my family. They thought it was just another networking event. They had no idea who the award recipient was. When my name was announced, I heard the gasp before I even stepped on stage. I walked up calmly, confidently, and told my story. Not with anger, not with accusations, just truth. I spoke about failure, starting over, being underestimated, being invisible. And then I thanked those who doubted me for giving me the motivation to succeed. The room gave a standing ovation. My family sat frozen. For the first time in my life, they saw me, not as the other daughter, but as someone they could no longer ignore. Afterward, my mother approached me, shaken, emotional, full of questions. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her and asked one simple thing. "Would you have believed me?" She had no answer. And in that moment,
I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their recognition. Because I had already built a life without it. And the most powerful part of this story? It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about realizing you never needed their validation in the first place.
The email was simple. I had been selected for a major entrepreneurial award. A formal event, hundreds of guests, media coverage, and 10 invitation seats. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I invited my family. They thought it was just another networking event. They had no idea who the award recipient was. When my name was announced, I heard the gasp before I even stepped on stage. I walked up calmly, confidently, and told my story. Not with anger, not with accusations, just truth. I spoke about failure, starting over, being underestimated, being invisible. And then I thanked those who doubted me for giving me the motivation to succeed. The room gave a standing ovation. My family sat frozen. For the first time in my life, they saw me. Not as the other daughter, but as someone they could no longer ignore. Afterward, my mother approached me, shaken, emotional, full of questions. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at her and asked one simple thing. Would you have believed me? She had no answer. And in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their recognition. Because I had already built a life without it. And the most powerful part of the story? It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about realizing you never needed their validation in the first place.
Before you go, if you think this story was shocking, you need to watch this next one. Because what happened there was even more unbelievable. Tap the video on your screen right now.